Morning, guys.
Hello.
How you doing,
Hey,
Mark?
good morning, dude.
Morning, morning. Morning, Tony.
Morning.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning, Ken and Nelson. How are you guys?
Good morning. Doing
Pretty good.
fine.
How are you doing?
Good. What does
Right.
your say, Funky? Yeah. What's
Yeah, it says Funk Yeah Friday.
nice?
You must want to go see Funkadelic, son.
Oh yeah, man, I got that. That DVD they got about their concert.
Yes.
Yeah, I got that. I was just, oh man, I was so happy when I was watching that because you're never gonna see him live the way they used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
And can't ignore the text I sent you. It was meant for somebody else. I sent you guys a couple people a chat text.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the classroom like auto generates messages from you, I think, or on your behalf, like, hey, your assignment's due. And I'm like, yeah.
It does. Yep.
All right.
That one is through the Google Classroom. It's just kind of this automatic thing it does. So.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you, when we're talking about finalizing stuff here with ratios and we're reading the label, we see the parts. Can we always just add the parts, then divide by the fixed mechanism that, we're diluting by, being 1 gallon bottle, 32 ounce gallon size or 32 ounce size?
If you are filling a container,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if you have a fixed container where you know the container size, then yes, you would add those to help.
Okay.
And we are going to go back through those 5 questions and review them this morning. That's the first thing we're going to do.
All right.
So, and that way, because what we're going to do, hopefully, is identify a couple basic rules. When do we divide by? When do we multiply? At what point, and how do we understand that? And there's some key words that we can use that'll help us. Let me get the attendance real quick, you guys, and then we'll get started. Just got to take the attendance real quick. So all right. So we've got a couple of people missing, but we're going to get started with our lesson. And as I mentioned the other day, this is, because this is a little bit more complicated, I have no problem with the fact that we want to take a minute, make sure we all are on the same page. We all understand this, and that'll help us. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen. I'm not going to do whiteboard today. Today I'll be sharing a through Microsoft Word, a document here, and you guys should see that. We're just going to go through this, and to understand how to answer these questions, I think what helps is also to understand really some triggers, some questions that are asked, and that helps us to determine, as Tony, you were asking, kind of which rule. Do I divide? Do I multiply? So we start with the first question. The first question was, a chemical label reads, mix the solution at 1 to 16 dilution. So now we have the ratio, right? The question is, how many ounces per gallon is that? So we need to be able to figure out, using that ratio, what is the ounces per gallon? So in this case, it's determining, utilizing this ratio, determining how many ounces. So in this case, we're going to divide because we have this ounces per gallon. So we have to first just break it down. How many ounces are in a gallon? It's 128 ounces, right? we're told that we're mixing at 1 part to 16 parts. So that's the given. That's the information we know. What we don't know is how many ounces this first part is, because that first part represents our chemical. How many ounces per gallon? And a gallon is 128 ounces. So we're going to divide that 16, okay, into it. So 128 divided by 16 gives us 8. All right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Everybody's got that?
Yes.
So the answer was 8 ounces to 128 ounces, or 8 ounces per gallon of water. And one of the things that tricks us up, by the way, is in our industry, we use some terms, we said ounces per gallon. What happens is those are not technically equal parts as far as terminology. Ounces and gallons are different, right? Ounce is a smaller measurement, a gallon is a larger measurement. So we have to make the measurements the same. That's one of the things we have to understand about what we're doing. So that's why we basically have to take and deal with this 128 number. All right, because what we're trying to do literally is we say we have a 1 to 16 ratio, or 1 part to 16 parts. That's, again, ratios with what we're looking at. So those parts need to be equal terms. So if this is 1 ounce to 16 ounces, right, that would be the same. That would be a 1 to 16. But what we asked was how many ounces, this first one, to 128. So we really don't know this, but what we do know is the ratio is 16 over here. That's why we're dividing that. Okay? And that's how we come up with that. Does that math make sense? All right. What we're going to do is we're going to jump to another one, again with the same ratio. We're going to let's skip number 2 for a minute. Let's jump to number 3. Again, the ratio, and this one tricked up a few of you guys because I try to keep this one a little simple. It was a 1-to-1 dilution. Okay, that's the ratio. So it is literally 1 part to 1 part. So no matter what it is, if I said I have a solution calls for a 1-to-1 ratio, that means if I have a gallon of chemical, I need to add a gallon of water, 1-to-1. If I have a 5-gallon pail, right, a much larger container, 1-to-1 means I have to have how many gallons of water? How many is it? It's equal parts, right? 1-to-1 is equal. So if I have 5 gallons of chemical, I need to have 5 gallons of water. That, you guys understand that concept?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, the same one on number 4. How many ounces per gallon is this? So we're going to do the same thought process. We're looking for ounces per gallon. We know that there's 128 ounces in a gallon, right? So now we have this really odd one. It's bigger than 128. It's 256 parts, okay? So a lot of water, a very little amount of chemical. We're still going to divide. It is still the same concept. Doesn't matter what this number is. Now, to help explain, and this one was pretty simple. We divide 128 by 256. We get 0.5. Let's use this concept, the same thing. What if the dilution ratio was 4-to-1? Okay. Now we're talking about 4 parts chemical to 1 part water. kind of tricks us up a little bit, right? Because now we're using a lot more chemical than we are water.
I have a
So,
question.
yes, sir.
All right. So you were saying it trick us up by 4.1. So sometimes it will,
421.
huh?
We have to read it right. It's 4. The 2 dots, the colon there is 2. That's the way it reads.
All right.
421.
4.21. All right.
Yep.
So sometimes it will flip flop.
No, I'm telling you this. There are going to be some chemicals where there's more chemical than there are water. So we always understand in the chemical business, the first part is the amount of chemical. The second part is the amount of water in the chemical dilution industry. So if this was the case, if somebody says I have a 4-to-1 ratio, that means I've got 4 parts of this chemical to 1 part of water. And if that's the case, that's a lot of chemical, very little water to that. So now we're going to do different. Now, what I don't even want to try and do the math because you guys won't ever really have to deal with that, because none of the normal chemicals that you guys use in basic cleaning will ever have a dilution ratio like that. The only time this comes into play is when we get into some of the advanced work, when we're dealing with gym floors and things like that. So at this point, don't worry about this, but I wanted you to understand, don't flip-flop them. Okay.
So only time that you're going to have that ratio, I mean, to put that into real context, is when you're trying to strip something, trying to pull something away, like flooring or
not even that. I think more so specialty coatings is about the only time you'll see that, when we're doing a specialized coating. And in that case, they may actually say, we want you to use 4 parts of part A and 1 part of part B. It's not even a water. It's 4-to-1 ratio of part A to B.
Okay.
And again, that occurs a lot with like gym finishes and so forth. Alex, you have a question?
Yes. So to solve these dilution ratios, all you need to do is divide.
In the case of when we're asking the question of ounces per gallon, we're going to be doing division.
By the chemical or the water? What else?
Okay. So in the case where we're given the dilution ratio, 1-to-16, we know the given is 16 parts of the chemical. We're asked how many ounces of, we know the given is the water, the 16, because it asks how many ounces per gallon is that? That's per gallon of water. So we're trying to find how many ounces of chemical.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Alex?
Yeah, one more thing I should add to that. If it was more than 1 gallon, let's take an example like 2 or 3, which seems uneven. Since 1 gallon is 120 ounces, wouldn't we need to times that by how much it is?
So that applies when we're going to get into this the question number 2.
Okay.
All right. That's when we'll multiply. What we have to understand is we're saying how many ounces per gallon is that? That's all we were determining in this question.
Okay.
Okay. So let's look at number 2, because this is where multiplication comes in. Now you're directed to mix a product 8 ounces per gallon of water. So they've given us more detail than the dilution ratio, right? We know the dilution ratio is 1-to-16 because we know 8 ounces to a gallon of water is a 1-to-16. We just solved for that in number 1. But now we're taking it a step further. How many ounces are we going to add to a tank that has 30 gallons? Okay. And one of the things I should have clarified in this question, because technically if that tank had a fixed capacity of just 30 gallons, then I would have to do another step to it. So you guys were on the right track of just trying to figure out, how much chemical to add to 30 gallons. That's what I was asking for in this one. So in this one, we know we have 8 ounces per gallon of water. There are 30 gallons. So we're going to multiply 8 by 30, and that gives us 240 ounces. That makes sense? Everybody see me get it? Most of you all got all that one. Those of you turned it in, they got that one. Number 3 seemed to trick us up a little bit, but again, just understanding when we see a ratio and we're saying 1 to something, in this one, 1 to 1 is 1 part chemical to 1 part water. It was a pretty basic one. So I threw that in there to trick you up because here we've been talking about different ones. So now let's do another one regarding multiplication. All right. This is that fixed container. And this one was the mind bender one. I think, Ken, you were the one who said it split your mind in two. I love that. That was awesome. All right. So our spray bottle is 24 ounces. We have a dilution rate of 2 ounces per gallon. How much chemical and how much water will you need to put in the bottle? So let's just write out what we know. We know we have 24 ounces. We know that there's 2 ounces per gallon of water. We know that there's 128 ounces in a gallon. So first of all, to get our ratio, because we need that ratio because 128, we're just dealing with the small part 24. So we need to know the ratio. And this is why it's important to know how to find the ratio, because that's the first thing you have to do when you're dealing with a smaller container. Find the ratio. So we took 128 ounces divided by 2, because that's what we said, 2 ounces per gallon of water. That is 64. So our ratio was 1 to 64. Okay, that's part 1 to understand this problem. The second part of it is we're now trying to figure out, and there's actually 3 steps to this, how much chemical and how much water. How many parts are there? If we have a 1 to 64 ratio, how many parts is that?
65 parts.
65 parts, exactly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the 24 ounces, divide it by 65, and several of you actually divided it by 64, but this one will be 65. And the reason we do that is we have to have room for the chemical and the water. They both are components of it. And to fill up that 24-ounce bottle, we need to be able to do both. All right, so we do the math here. Grab my calculator. 24 divided by 65 is 0.369, or we could just say 0.37 if we round it up. Okay, that's roughly about 1/3 of an ounce that we're going to use. By the way, you won't find a measuring container that measures 0.37. So, but this is roughly 1/3 of an ounce. So now, if that's the case, where you've got 0.37 ounces of chemical, that's the first part. The other part, with the 1 to 64, we have to have how much? Okay. There's 2 ways of finding this. One, you could subtract it by simply going, well, I know I have 24 ounces here. I'm going to minus 0.37, and that'll be 23.63. Or we could do this route. Because we used a dilution ratio, we literally can take 64 times that 0.37 and that would give us the 23.67 roughly. Okay, or 63, sorry. And the reason why we would do that is if we were doing it true ratios. We found part 1, part 2 is that. So there's 2 different ways to come to the same answer. I like subtracting it. To me, it's simpler. I'm going, all right, well, I know this is how much chemical I can get. Maximum capacity is 24 ounces. I know how much chemical I have. The rest is going to be water, so I just subtract it. 24 ounces, subtract the 0.37, gives me my math. I'm going to post this in the classroom, these answers, for you guys to take and review. Because prior to you taking your test, and even as you're taking your test, this will be helpful for you guys to be able to review this, make sure you're comfortable with that, and that will help you. And you can use it as a reference, okay? And one other thing I promised to do, but I did not do the other day, and I realized it when I was reviewing some of these assignments, I didn't put the formula up. So I'm actually going to write out the formula for you guys and post that by this afternoon. Okay, that way, when you're in doubt, reference the formula. It's a real simple way to do it. Okay, so that being said, I'll stop my share and we're going to go back into our lesson. And part of our lesson today, we discussed that we were now going to take it to the next level. So over the last week, we have discussed how chemicals work. That's been the overall process of understanding pH scale, how that affects things. We discussed the different chemical actions that occur and the physical actions of cleaning. We talked about how to dilute it or mix the chemicals. Now let's step over into a little bit of real world application. Understanding the importance of how chemicals work in germ control. And, you know, all of us are concerned with germ control, right? We've kind of all tired of COVID. And let's be honest, COVID isn't the first one that has ever occurred to us as a society. In fact, prior to COVID breaking out, you know, we had other pandemics that weren't necessarily as rough on us as a global community as the COVID-19 has been. But we've seen these pandemics, and we've seen things like the flu virus. We've dealt with really HIV as a virus that affected millions of people worldwide. We've dealt with simple bacteria issues that make people sick. We're constantly fighting bacteria and viruses, trying to kill germs. Our book, in the highlighted section on page 19, makes this introductory statement. It says, one of your most important jobs as a custodian is to kill germs, bacteria, and viruses, or stop their growth before they make people sick. Germs must be controlled in nearly all areas of a building, but some of the most important include touch points in restrooms or shower rooms, locker rooms, kitchens, cafeterias, hospitals, nursing homes, medical facilities like doctors or dental offices. I think we all have come to realize that germ control is everywhere we go now. We have to be worried about, you know, contamination. My wife carries hand sanitizer when she goes to the store. You know, she makes sure she's got wipes to wipe down the cart. And now the grocery stores are disinfecting the carts. She comes back, she washes her hands, and we sanitize. Why? Because she doesn't want to bring that stuff home. You know, we're all in a global community. We're interacting with each other. So it's important that we understand. But the interesting point is germs are everywhere. In fact, the average person has what it says 9 to 11 pounds of microorganisms in and on our bodies, which makes us each our own little biosphere. And most germs are not harmful. In fact, some are even helpful. Our bodies produce certain bacteria and different things to help fight off other things. So we need a certain amount of that. But obviously, the ones that we're worried about is something that we are going to use the term a pathogen. And a pathogen is basically any germ that makes people or plants or animals sick. Those are pathogens. Later, we'll talk about blood-borne pathogens. But our focus today is on how to be able to kill these pathogens, how to deal with germs. And first, we need to understand how germs grow, all right? They actually need a food source. Usually, they need that into a very ideal situation. They survive in temperatures that are typically room temperature, right around 95 to 100 degrees, which is perfect because what's the temperature of our body? Anybody know our body temp?
98.
98.6. That's the average body temperature. So germs love it. We are the perfect host for germs. So the ideal situation is we want to control that. Now, here's what's really cool. If it is a very cold environment, germs grow much slower. If it is too hot, too extreme of temperatures, germs don't grow at all. They don't survive in those very extreme temperatures. In fact, one of the types of abilities to kill germs involves the use of heat. So we'll talk about that. So let's break it down into the methods of germ control. And there's basically 3 different methods. We were going to refer to sanitation or sanitizing, disinfecting, and sterilizing. Those are the 3 different levels. And each of these different levels has an increased amount. The fact is that cleaning is actually a general term for the process that involves removing of soils or pathogens from an environment. So when we talk about cleaning in this book, we can refer to anything from just removal of dry dust to removal of those wet soils, the wet sticky soils. And the term clean is a little bit different from the term in regards to disinfecting. Cleaning is not disinfecting. In fact, though, cleaning is a first step towards disinfecting. As I mentioned, germs need a food source. Yeah, can you imagine going into a restroom, okay, and you have urine in the restroom. We have soils build up. Can you imagine just spraying down disinfectant and expecting it to kill everything without actually removing the soil? Does that make any sense to you? That's reality. What some people think is all we need to do is spray a disinfectant, it'll kill it. But the reality is we need to remove the soil. In fact, a friend of mine has developed a term that he uses in the cleaning world. He refers to it as the WWW of cleaning, right? The first W is waste, removing of dry soils. So picking up those dry soils, the waste that's there. Then wet. Now that is spraying and applying a chemical to get those wet, sticky soils. And then wiping or removal of that soil. And that applies to everything in cleaning, whether it is when we do floors or disinfecting, okay, we want to remove all the food sources first. So that would mean removing the dry debris, spraying and allowing the chemical to work on that wet, sticky soil, and then wiping it clean. There is interesting thing. Part of the regulations and the testing that is done on disinfectants is it tests it in an environment that has a small amount of soil there. And the reason being is anything over that level of soil, they realize the disinfectant won't work. So they test it and they say that you need to remove the soils first, the presence of organic material. Then you disinfect. So let's analyze those 3 levels of disinfectant. The first is sanitizing. Now, sanitizing refers to anything that is going to kill above 50% of those pathogens up to 99%. That's a wide range of kill. But understand, it is not 100% kill. It is 99%. Most of the time, that's sufficient. 99%. In fact, anybody know with the vaccines that we're being given or they're starting to be given for COVID-19, what the effective rate is on those?
I'm thinking 80%.
90%. Now they got a new one saying 60%.
Yeah, so the new Johnson one is at a 60%, but the first couple that were done by Pfizer and Moderna had a 96% effective rate. That's a pretty good effective rate. 96 out of 100 people, it's going to be effective on. So that's a pretty good effective rate. When we're talking about killing germs, we're talking about an effective rate up to 99%. Now, here's the sad part of that. I like 99% a lot better than I like 50%, right? Because that means one out of every 2 bugs is not going to actually get killed by it if it only has a 50% kill rate. I don't like those odds. That's not good for me. I want to see 99%. I like 99.999. I want to see really effective, but kill it all. So that being said, the labeling that we use when we see the term sanitize, that means that somebody had to do testing that was established by the government, the EPA, which stands for Environmental Protection Agency. So when the EPA establishes a guideline and they say, okay, here's the testing, here's what you have to kill. You have a microorganism, and we'll use the term staphylococcus. That is a staph infection, right? And staph infection, we see a lot of that in hospitals, or people get staph infection in their mouth or their nose. So staph infection, I don't want to get it because it gets into my bloodstream. I don't want to get sick from it because it could kill me. So that being said, I'm looking at something and it says it is registered as EPA registered as a sanitizer. I want to read the label and see what is the percentage of kill claim. Is it at a 99% or is it at a 70%? So it's important. One of the things about labeling, by the way, when a company registers their product to be a sanitizer or disinfectant, they have to name the different viruses or bacteria or microorganisms, okay, that they're killing on the back side of the bottle, on the label somewhere. So I would encourage you guys, look at the labeling on your Lysol or on your Clorox or any of your disinfectants you have at home. You will see kill claims for maybe 3 to 10 different organisms. But if you look at a commercial disinfectant, what is used in a hospital, you may see kill claims for 20 or 30 different microorganisms because they've tested on a much broader range. And every single one of those tests, they have to show you how much of a kill. So literally, part of their test is they'll take a petri dish, they'll put this microorganism in there, and then they put the chemical, and then they have to measure after a period of time, after 1 minute, after 2 minutes, after 5 minutes, after 10 minutes, they're measuring how much of a kill did I get. So the other parameter of that is we mentioned on Wednesday's class something called contact time. Disinfectants need time to work. Sanitizers need time to work. They don't happen instantaneously. I don't spray it and it's like a flamethrower and it just destroys it. I have to put it on and allow it to work because that's what they did in the lab. And they put it on that microorganism and they tested it. And they tested it. They said, okay, I have a kill claim and I can kill up to this percentage. Now, as I mentioned, if it's a sanitizer, it's a wide range, 50 to 99%. If it is a disinfectant, it has a kill claim that it has to hit 99.99999. So that's pretty dang close to 100% that a disinfectant kills. So you can imagine as they run those tests over and over again that they're finding it's, almost 100%. They might have 1 in 1,000 or 10,000 microorganisms that survived, but all the rest of the bugs died of that staphylococcus or whatever other virus we were dealing with. Now, that is what we refer to is called efficacy data. Efficacy data has to relate to kill. How much of a kill? How effective is it in killing? Every disinfectant has an efficacy data sheet. Now, that is stuff that's not normally provided to the consumer, but the manufacturer keeps that stuff on hand. And if you needed it, it would be made available to you. A lot of this information, though, is provided on the safety data sheet. It'll tell you what it can kill and on the labels. There are different types of disinfection. It says that some disinfection can be done in a one-step process where a disinfectant is to be applied to a surface after it is cleaned, or a two-step where cleaning it and disinfecting are performed simultaneously. That is a lot of what we use currently in our restrooms, where we'll spray down like a Clorox disinfectant. We'll spray it, we'll wipe it, but we'll let it sit so it's both cleaning and disinfecting at the same time. And when we wipe it up, we're removing all that soil. I personally like the process where I clean first and then apply just a straight disinfectant. To me, it's a more effective. I like to have a clean surface to apply my disinfectant. And that's just so that it's going to be the most effective. I've got all the food source away there. So those are the two. There's sanitizing and disinfecting that we do. Anybody have any friends or family that are in the medical world or in maybe dental? Nelson? Okay. You may have heard of a product or a machine called an autoclave. Okay. An autoclave is a machine that sterilizes instruments. What sterilization is, it's the most effective way to kill germs. It literally just burns them up, because what an autoclave does is it takes it up to temperatures that is so high that nothing could grow. Steam vapor is kind of a similar method. So if you're running steam vapor, you can sometimes also achieve this, where you're getting those kind of high temperatures, because steam vapor is temperatures over 210 degrees. right? Water boils at 210, I believe, or 212. So sterilization is a very effective way of killing, but it's not something that works well for our business. We just can't put a room into an autoclave and kill everything. We can't take everything in that room and just heat it to these extreme temperatures over a couple hundred degrees. That's not practical. We also can't use hot steam vapor on everything because, as we mentioned before, it can damage surfaces. You know, you start to apply hot steam vapor onto plastics, you'll start to see it melt. That's why, interestingly enough, products are now saying, are they dishwasher safe? Are they going to handle the high temperatures? And it doesn't even get steaming in a dishwasher. You know, it's getting to 165 degrees and then heated up to maybe 180. It's not achieving that same kind of result. So that being said, sterilization is the most effective as far as killing of germs, but is the least practical. So most of what we're going to deal with is the two, sanitizing and disinfecting. And for the purposes of the most effective for us, it is disinfecting. We want to achieve results over 99.999. So we encourage you, where possible, use a disinfectant. There are some applications where it's not necessary. So we will use a lower grade. And there are some applications where you'll see a sanitizer. So another example of a sanitizer doesn't quite hit that 100% kill like a disinfectant is if you worked in a restaurant or in a bar and you have what's called a 3-sink system of washing glasses, where you put the beer mug or your glass into dish soap, and then they will rinse it in a sanitizer. Okay, it's a dip. They'll dip it in there, they'll rinse it, and they'll put it in there, let it air dry. The sanitizer kills and rinses away all the soap, as well as it sanitizes the glass, but it's not 100%. It's usually around a 99% kill, which is more than enough for what we're dealing with in a restaurant. Okay, let's now take it into the types of disinfectants. We've explained there's sanitizing and disinfecting, but what types of chemicals do we use? And some of these things are things you guys have all used before. For example, if you've ever been into have a medical procedure where you had to have surgery of any kind, you've seen doctors use iodine, where they'll put it onto a wound. Okay, a lot of times people don't understand why they're using iodine, but iodine kills bacteria. It's great for prepping an area that they're going to cut open so that there's no foreign bodies growing on the skin around that area. So let's walk through this. Page 21 of your book. We're going to go through the different types of disinfectants. The first one is pine oil. And I mentioned this the other day. We talked about pine sol. It's a pine solvent. Remember, we talked about that was one of the original types of detergents, is something like pine oil. Really fantastic product. But remember how we talked about ratios sometimes being reverse? This is an example of being more chemical than water. The typical dilution on it is about 8 quarts of pine oil to 2 quarts of water. Okay. So that's a lot more chemical than water. That becomes very expensive. It also generates, remember how we talked about volatile organic compounds, those things that could cause respiratory problems for us? Pine oil generates a lot of VOCs. So even though it smells really good, people like that fresh pine scent, the VOCs are too harmful. The product is too expensive And we have to kill a lot of trees to make pine oil. So there's other ways we've developed. So although pine oil is effective, it has like an 80% effective rate. It's still not the most efficient use of it. But if we go back 100 years ago, we used to see a lot more pine oil types of disinfectants. The other one I mentioned is iodine. Iodine has a unique feature, is that it's able to kill a microorganism called tuberculosis. And that's a very hard microorganism or pathogen to kill, because tuberculosis, the cell wall of that pathogen is very hard. It forms this really tough shell around the cell. And because of that, it's not easily killed. In fact, it has these little spikes that stick up so that when other things try to kill it, regular disinfectants, it doesn't like to be killed off easily. The problem with tuberculosis is it's also airborne, much like what we're dealing with right now with COVID-19, because we know that it's airborne. So from that standpoint, if you have tuberculosis, you should always be wearing a mask when you're around other people, because you don't want to spread it to them. And they use very strong antibiotics. But iodine works extremely well in killing that. The problem with iodine not only is the fact that it's expensive, but it also will stain surfaces. Because of its nature, it will corrode surfaces, and has a very limited use. Most of the time, the only time we were using iodine is in a surgical setting, where people were using it for surgeries. Even that, we have gone away from iodine and gone into more synthetic types of processes, or things called betadine, that don't stain nearly as bad. Now the next one, and again, I'm giving you the whole gamut, even though we don't use all these. The next one we talk about is something called an iodophore. Iodophore. It's a hard one to say. It's a combination of an iodine and a detergent, and not nearly as toxic, but it really works in an acid type cleaning. So they're really not good for general purpose use. We'll see iodophores used more in food processing type of applications. And not as, like I said, not as effective as iodine because of that combination with the detergents. Reality is it still has some staining issues as a problem. So we don't use iodophores in general cleaning either. Now here's the one that we all know and love, and we've used it for years. Hypochlorite. One of the most common is sodium hypochlorite. That is the chemical term for bleach. And if you know anything about bleach, bleach is a very effective product for killing of germs. Household bleach is a 5% sodium hypochlorite, but it doesn't do anything for cleaning. So bleach is not an effective cleaner. It is a straight disinfectant. Up until about 20 years ago, the CDC recommended, and even up till almost 10 years ago, the CDC would recommend that if you were dealing with a natural disaster and you had to disinfect surfaces, the safest thing to use was a bleach water solution, to mix up some of your own disinfectant with bleach and water. It works extremely well. There are some effects to it though. Bleach can corrode metal. It can dull floors. It can burn your skin and eyes. It can obviously ruin clothing, right? Because you spill bleach on your clothing. What's it do? It removes the color. It can damage the cotton fibers. So bleach has a limited effect, but it is very effective. And in a lot of healthcare situations, they still use lots of bleach. Now, the thing about bleach is if you mix it up in a spray bottle to be used for disinfecting, and again, a lot of counties and municipalities, including the CDC, still recommend this, to use a bleach water solution. That mixture is only good for less than 24 hours. The book tells us 20 hours. So you have to replenish that every day. Dump it, mix it up again. So does it work? Yes. If you have no other choice, it is my go-to. But I'm also careful with it. Because remember, if I mix bleach with another chemical, like a detergent that maybe has ammonia or something in that, it could create a toxic gas. It has a lot of harmful effects, so we're very careful with bleach. But it does work. So if in a natural disaster or you don't have something else, grab the bleach, mix up a spray bottle, it will work. Should make sure you have a clean spray bottle. Now we get into the synthetics. This is the man-made products that work well. One of them in our book, it talks about a product called a synthetic phenol. That was a type of disinfectant that was used to kill tuberculosis, much like the iodine does. We were using a lot in hospitals through the 1970s and 1980s. We don't use this product much either because of two major problems with it. We found that phenols can cause cancer and that phenols are very harsh on the lungs. So we don't typically use those, but there are some specialty applications, nothing that you will deal with in your general purpose cleaning. So the last couple ones that we'll deal with are the most common. This is what we're going to use majority of the time. Quaternary ammonium compounds. Now, quaternary ammonia compound, or a quat, is a combination of different detergent and surfactant packages that the reason why you use, it's called quaternary, is it has to do with a specific blend of compounds that are very effective. And some of the really good things about them, first of all, they're not harmful for our skin. They're not as corrosive on the floors. They're really good in general purpose cleaning. They can be mixed. We mentioned some dilution ratios of 1 ounce to the gallon or 2 ounces to the gallon. That's usually the dilution ratio for most disinfectants. In some cases, you will find it at a 1 to 256 or half an ounce to a gallon. That's a really strong concentrated disinfectant. And these quaternary ammonia compounds are really good at cleaning up like blood and bodily fluids. They're just a good broad range. Most of what you buy over the counter is a quaternary ammonia compound. That is the general disinfectant that you're using when you buy a disinfectant over the counter in Target or your grocery store, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, any of those places. They're going to use a quaternary ammonia compound. So those are the basics. The last one that is a newer product brought into the disinfecting world is hydrogen peroxide. And hydrogen peroxide's been around for use in the medical field dating back to the 1800s. We used it a lot for burn units, and still it's used effectively in burn units. When somebody has a bad third-degree burn, part of what they do is they'll use a peroxide solution to clean that to kill any bacteria so that you don't get an infection. We use a lot more of hydrogen peroxide solutions. Kind of an interesting story. Peroxide cleaning solutions really didn't come into play until about 20 years ago. And in right around the year 2000, late 90s, early 2000, one chemical company out of the Midwest called Envirox. So Nelson, you mentioned H2 Orange 2 as a product you used there at the school. Remember that? So that was from a company called Envirox. And Envirox created the first stabilized hydrogen peroxide that we could use in the cleaning industry. Initially, it was only a sanitizer. It didn't have as broad of range of kill as a disinfectant. Nowadays, it has up to a 99%, so it still is a sanitizer. But we have learned how to take hydrogen peroxide and combine it with a quaternary ammonia compound. Some of the other chemical companies have learned how to do that. And as a result, we get a very effective product for disinfecting because it now utilizes two really effective disinfectants. And the really cool thing with hydrogen peroxide, chemically speaking, it is just one oxygen molecule different from water. It's H2O2. And as a result, it's that extra oxygen molecule that makes other detergents work better. It strengthens them. And when we combine it with the quaternary ammonia compound, or a quat, what we've got is a very effective disinfectant. So a lot of the major chemical companies in the United States combine these two. Clorox does. You can buy over-the-counter peroxide-based disinfectants. You can, in the commercial cleaning world, companies like Diversey, Spartan, Hilliard, the list goes on. Betco, they're all the major chemical companies in the United States for commercial cleaning products. They all make a combination of a peroxide and a quat disinfectant. And they use those most commonly in two areas, schools and in healthcare. That's the biggest purchasers of those type of disinfectants. And I tell you that because that's what you guys are going to deal with the most. So if you see a disinfectant that has those two ingredients, know that it's going to be very effective. What's nice is with peroxide mixed into it, it actually reduces the amount of detergent you need. So as a result, it leaves less residue behind. Because one of the only major negatives about quaternary ammonium compounds is that ammoniated part of the compound leaves a chemical residue. And it can, over time, dull a surface like a floor or a waxed floor. Now, I personally don't like to use disinfectants on waxed floors. One, because I don't disinfect floors unless it's a surgical area or a medical concerned area. Nobody eats off the floor, and if they do, they're stupid. Sorry, I'm being rude there, but we just don't eat off floors. So, if you're going to eat off of the floor, you're going to kind of get whatever everybody's walked on that floor in traffic. So why would you do that? But with disinfectants, they don't have enough of a real value to disinfect the floors. Unless, as I mentioned, it's in a medical environment, then it needs to be like a sterile kind of environment, like in a surgical room or something along those lines. So that's the basic types of disinfectants. What we focus in, even though you understand that there is iodophores and there's iodine and phenols, we focus in on basically the quats or quats with peroxide, and then also bleach. Those are our core disinfectants, the products that we're going to use most of the time. And if anybody tells you don't use bleach as a disinfectant, that means they don't understand the power of bleach. I will never come out and tell you that bleach is not an effective product. It has its place. And I believe that as long as we know its value and know how to use it, we can use it effectively. But also know it has its negative things, and that is that it could cause damage, corrosion, and those things. So let's talk about this whole world of disinfectants and green. Because interestingly, you know, in the concept of being green, the whole idea behind the green movement was being environmentally conscious. We don't want to do any damage to things. We don't want to damage surfaces. We don't want to cause negative effects to ourselves. We don't want to hurt the environment itself. And yet disinfectants, by their very nature, are designed to kill. They're a weapon. They're a weapon against pathogens. So how do we make disinfectants green? Our book talks about that, how we do that. And notice on page 20 in the little blue box, it tells us, since disinfectants kill things, how can they be green? The answer is that the real goal of green cleaning is to clean with minimal impact on the environment. Sometimes we have to use chemicals that can harm living things in order to get the surface clean enough to be healthy. Products can leach into water and an environment where they can kill living things and linger for years. The EPA and other certifying bodies are beginning to understand this and have established guidelines for certifying disinfectants as green. As more efficacy studies are performed and newer formulations and technologies are developed, the number of green certified disinfectants is expected to increase. I tell you this to tell you that our industry, especially in the middle of a pandemic, is working aggressively to find safer, more effective disinfectants. Peroxide is part of that. Interestingly enough, another ingredient that has become a very popular product is an acid. It's called peracetic acid, or something we commonly know as vinegar. Vinegar, in conjunction with hydrogen peroxide, is an amazing disinfectant. So we're learning how to use some new technologies, and over the next 10 years, we will see this technology grow and develop and expand more than we have in the last 30 years. Hydrogen peroxide was the last really big game changer in the cleaning chemicals when it comes to this. But right now, this is a great opportunity to talk about it, is something that's being used in the school districts, and that is aqueous ozone. What we've learned about aqueous ozone is that water can be effective as a sanitizer. Now, it can't be effective as a disinfectant because it can't kill enough, but ozone has an effective kill ability to attack microorganisms or pathogens. The problem we're having right now is the testing that's been established by the EPA. They don't have a true testing for something that's not a man-made detergent or product. So they don't have a way to be able to really effectively label and disinfect something like aqueous ozone. So they give it a general term, and that is they'll say it is a sanitizer because we know it can kill, but it doesn't have a EPA registration number as a disinfectant. It goes to show you, though, how the green movement is changing things, and the government has to keep up with these changes. So that is something that I expect we're going to see more of. Aqueous ozone products have been around for over 10 years. But we're just now seeing them really fully implemented in the market in the last 3 to 4 years. So I will, one of the projects is I'm going to do a video that I'll show you guys on Monday's class that is how aqueous ozone works, how it's made, and as well, actually, we have a little bit of time today. We can do this now. So give me a second here, and I'm going to pull that YouTube video up. So Monday's class, just so everybody knows, is going to be fairly simple. We're going to review this lesson and we will cover the last portion of it dealing with SDS and hazardous waste and bodily fluids. It's a fairly simple class, especially since we've covered so much detailed information. I'm going to show you guys two different videos. One is from one of the leading companies. This is the one that Elk Grove Unified School District uses. So we get it loaded here, and then I'll share my screen with you guys. And hang on, because my volume. I have to do one thing about screen sharing, so bear with me here for a second. It's going to share the audio too. Share sound. There we go.
Tersano, changing the way the world cleans. Welcome.
I don't know why I'm. Okay.
To Tersano. Alongside your employer, we are happy to assist in changing the way
Are you guys
clean
hearing anything?
and making your work environment safer,
You are?
happier, and healthier.
Today, we are here to help you understand the Lotus Pro cleaning system and how it will make your job safer and easier to do. Come check out what we have in store.
Every year, millions of gallons of cleaning products are used in factories, hospitals, offices, schools, and retail stores. Cleaning products contain dangerous toxins and chemicals, which are not only harmful to humans, but to the environment as well. Luckily, the solution is here. Introducing the Lotus Pro High Capacity Unit, your toxin-free alternative to chemical cleaners, working faster and more effectively than chemicals while being safe for people and the planet. Let's show you how it works. Cold tap water enters the Terzano Stabilizer Unit. Terzano Stabilizer mixes with the cold tap water, expanding cleaning time to 4 or 24 hours depending on applications. The treated water leaves the stabilizer and passes through the flowjet connector, entering the high-capacity unit. Oxygen enters the dispenser through the filter cartridge. 4,500 volts of electricity transforms O2 into O3. Ozone gas that is not saturated is separated and safely dispensed as oxygen. Aqueous ozone leaves the dispenser to fill mop buckets, trigger sprayers, and other cleaning equipment. Now let's see it in use. The oxygen molecules are infused into ozone inside of the Lotus Pro and added to your sanitary equipment. The ozone is attracted to dirt, grime, stains, bacteria, and contaminants. Harmless to people, but deadly to dirt, grime, and germs, ozone quickly attacks and eliminates them. Once cleaning and sanitizing is complete, ozone returns to its original state of oxygen and water, leaving no toxins, no fumes, and no residue, eliminating the use of chemicals, providing a safer and more enjoyable work environment. Wondering what this does for you? By using the Lotus Pro, you are reducing your exposure to chemicals and your chance of injury at work.
It is simple to use and allows you to clean all sorts of surfaces with just one product. Getting started is easy.
When using the Lotus Pro, make sure that cold water is flowing through the hose and turn the switch on the Lotus Pro to on. Wait for the green system ready light to be on and go. The Lotus Pro is now dispensing aqueous ozone for filling spray bottles, mop buckets, auto scrubbers, and other applications for cleaning of all surfaces. Aqueous ozone is perfect for cleaning for up to 4 or 24 hours, depending on the stabilizer. Make sure to start with a fresh bottle every shift, as the solution safely returns back to water and oxygen, so you aren't putting any chemicals down the drain or into our rivers and lakes. Aqueous ozone can clean every surface you can imagine. Floors via mop or auto scrubber, windows and other glass, counters, sinks and toilets. The Lotus Pro is simple, easy, and safe to use.
But there are some things you could encounter. A notification light. When the notification light comes on, it is time to notify your manager, as it is nearly time to change
to get into a couple more details. Nelson, you are probably the one most familiar with this. You mind sharing with the class how this has worked for you, your experience working with this kind of technology in the school? Let me stop my screen share.
Well, first when we was introduced to ozone, and we all have our internal stuff, negative stuff, and then once we see the product ozone working, it became awesome. But at the same time, if prime example for the bathroom, you had the rust ring, you had the rust around the sink, but you would still, before you use that ozone, you would have to use like Comet and your green pad to get the rust removed, and then apply your ozone to that sink from here on out, and then it'd be easy to maintain. But the first, like I said, the first time I would have to use my Comet and scrub the sink out to get all the soil removed from it to have a clean surface, and then I come back and spray it again with the ozone, and and maintain it that way. So your first priority, you have to detail your bathroom sink or whatever area you're cleaning, the student desk. Want to make sure you get all the soil off before you use the ozone, or else you just spray the ozone and let it set, wipe, and spray it again.
Okay. Let me ask you, have you found that by using this, you have less of a buildup as far as residue on surfaces, like in the bathroom floor? So if you remember, some of the products in the past left the floor sticky.
Yeah, so by using the ozone, it's pretty awesome because when you come back, when you mop the bathroom floor, we use a micro pad mop.
Yep.
And you mop it by so many inches or feet, and then you change the micro pad mop and get a new one and reply it again. It pick up all the germs, the dirt, and it don't leave no sticky residue. Like if you use an HO2 orange, you can see the soap sub still there.
Yeah. Yep. So it is a technology that is being incorporated, and this is, as I mentioned before, we will talk about how green technology is advancing and things that you guys may be exposed to. If you're working in a school, you're going to find more of that green technology. If you're working in a healthcare environment, you're probably going to see that the school, or not school, the medical facility is going to lend itself more to tried and true chemistry and not so innovative, because their most important concern isn't just how things look, it's about how healthy and safe it is for the people using it, the occupants. So from that standpoint, they're going to use a little bit more of a bleach base or a stronger quaternary disinfectant. Because an interesting thing that happens in a healthcare environment, decisions that are made regarding cleaning chemicals are not just made by the janitorial staff. The overall health of a hospital is determined by the infectious control department. Okay, there's usually a registered nurse who has a pretty high degree infection prevention, and that infectious control nurse deals with everything within the hospital regarding infection prevention, because one of the most challenging things that occurred in the 21st century for the healthcare field was something called hospital-acquired infections, HAIs. Now, what is an HAI? An example, when my dad was alive, he went into a care facility after he had developed an infection. Because he had diabetes, he had developed an infection in his foot, and that led to him having to take some very strong antibiotics. So he went into a care facility that could administer that. He finished his round of antibiotics. He was scheduled to go home. Right before he got released, he picked up another infection, a virus, that led to him going back in the hospital just a few days later for pneumonia. That's a hospital-acquired infection. He didn't come in with it, but he acquired it while he was in their care. Therefore, they are very diligent. They're working hard to prevent or reduce the amount of HAIs. And the other reason for it, a few years ago, the laws changed. The insurance companies got a little tired of having to pay for a person who was in the hospital for this and got another sickness or another virus, and now they had to come back in. The insurance companies were having to pay twice, and this is ridiculous. Why are we having to pay, and why is the patient having to pay for something that was acquired while they were in the hospital? So now if you get sick while you're in the hospital, that hospital is on the hook for your care. If you get sick in a care home and you then it's something that was established that was acquired while in the care home from something that is there within that, they become liable for it and they have to pay for your treatment. So now there's a lot of financial burden that goes along with this in the medical world. So infection prevention is a huge issue. They look at how are we treating these things, and therefore, from the standpoint of the medical professionals, they're going to use the most effective, strongest product possible. This becomes a challenge for us on the cleaning side because stronger isn't always better, as we mentioned. There are some disinfectants that are actually going to harm surfaces, cause corrosion. So there's a balance that goes on between those two worlds. And we have to learn how to use them effectively. And that's why something that's not listed in this particular lesson, but will be in our next lesson that starts next week when we start talking about above floors, is the use of microfiber. Because here in this lesson, we were talking about the chemicals, but microfiber also helps in the reducing of pathogens and microorganisms because they effectively capture a huge portion, anywhere from 60% to as much as 90% of microorganisms can be captured with just a microfiber. So they're very effective. And that's why what you're doing at your district, the use of aqueous ozone with a microfiber, it's a fantastic combination. And then there's another step, and that is how we apply disinfectant. So some tools next week I'll show you is the use of electrostatic sprayers. I actually have pictures because yesterday, one of the things I did, I had a meeting with a manufacturer who was showing me a new electrostatic sprayer. Now, anybody familiar with powder coating in painting world? You might have seen something that's powder coated. It's paint that is baked on almost to a surface. Powder coating is the application of paint using electrostatic sprayers. It basically creates a charge to the paint so it sticks to the metal. We now have used that technology in cleaning world and have created sprayers that allow the chemical to wrap around all parts of the surface and more effectively spread out the disinfectant. So disinfecting goes beyond just the chemical. It's also the process, and that's what we'll get into more in our next week's lesson. So some things to look forward to, taking now the application of what we've been dealing with and taking it to the next part. All right. So the last part of our class today is a little bit of an open discussion. We've had a lot to cover under chemicals. I'd like to open this up to questions you guys may have over the last 2 weeks of our lessons. Any questions?
It's like, I don't know where to start. We have so much information that we have covered. Mine's will be on the math part.
Yeah. All right, Mark, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, if you could, for me, I mean, I'd like if you could send me some more ratio
More ratio
problems and whatnot. Yeah, so I can do something over the weekend. I mean,
okay.
I think I need to brush up a little on that.
Okay. I am more than happy to do that. I'll work on some and get those out by Monday morning. And you guys just use them as a scenario. I'll try and put together enough so that you guys can, sink your teeth into that and help you through it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's take a minute to just kind of review. You guys, we talked a lot about the way chemicals worked, right? So just some simple things. If you were dealing with rust or mineral deposits, what type of chemical would you use?
That'd be an acid.
That'd be an acid. Yep. Why is that, Mark? Why is the choice of an acid?
The minerals and whatnot that it breaks it down. The minerals, the rust.
And those are what by nature? If they're not acid, they are
Alkalines.
exactly. Yep. So it's the reason why we do it. We know we do it, but the reason is those minerals that we're removing are alkaline. Okay. So that being said, if we're cleaning other soils, things like greases and oils, what kind of cleaner would we use for that?
That'd be an acid again?
Opposite side.
Or alkaline, because it has acid. The grease and oils have acid.
Yep. So review that. In your book, that information is contained on page 16, soils and pH. Just a simple thing for you guys to review over. Let me pull up something in the classroom that will help you too. All right, so here's what I want you guys, if you want to help yourself to review. All right, on the classroom, and let me share that with you here. So in the classroom, you guys should all be seeing that now. Under classwork, when you scroll down to the chemistry of cleaning, you will see we have all the different assignments, and one of those was the outline for this class, the basic chemistry of cleaning. Use this as a way for help yourself to review the information we've covered over the last 2 weeks. It's a fantastic tool for you guys because it goes through, it's tied right into our book. We covered chemical safety. Go through the information on the discussion questions for yourself. Make sure you understand why it is. The questions on safety data sheets, we'll be covering more of that next week on Monday. But we covered about mixing of chemicals. We covered about personal protective equipment, the 2 different types of soils. So this is a good way for you to review the information that we've covered over the last 2 weeks. So with every lesson that we give out, I will cover that at the beginning, and then I'm going to encourage you guys at the end to review that just to keep it fresh for yourself so that when you go to starting to prepare to take your test, you have this, and then as I mentioned, you also have the fact it's open book. In all honesty, a lot of the answers to your questions on the open book part of the test are found right here in this little handout, because this is prepared by ISSA for us. So, for example, chemicals that remove the salts that make water hard. Hard water is above 400 parts per million. That will be on a test on chemistry. I can guarantee you. Okay. What is a synthetic detergent? That also is a question I can guarantee you is on the test. So just utilize this really is a study guide for you. And hopefully that'll help you guys prepare for the lesson. So what I will do, Monday's lesson, we are going to wrap up talking about the safety data sheets, bloodborne pathogens, and then on Monday, I'm introducing the test. We now have the testing. I'm going to show you guys how to do it. And we'll do the first test. We will do where you guys can do it online while we're in class. And then that way, for the very first one, which is short, it's only 15 questions. If you have questions, I'm here to answer those questions. You know, and again, I won't ever, you know, for testing purposes, I'm not going to tell you the answer, but I'm going to help you to look at where you find that in the book and how you reason on it. Just so you know, the total testing is a total of 150 questions, but that's split up over the 6 lessons that we cover. So, all right. So that, as I mentioned, that'll cover all the way up. This part here on dilution ratios, helpful guide, kind of breaks down what the different general measurements are, the ratios, and these are some of the sample questions you will find also on the test. So use that. I think there's 4 questions it gives you.
So like the pre-test that we have, we could also practice on the pre-test.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So there's a lot right there just under dilutions. There's 4 pages of dilution ratio questions. It gives you the answer, but I want you guys to make sure you understand how you're finding the answer. It's not enough just to know the answer. It's more important to know how do you get the answer. All right. So that's all in your classroom on dilution ratios. And all the factors of cleaning that we've discussed are all in there. The discussion about disinfectants. And here's an important one. Which of the 3 processes of controlling germs is the least effective? Today we talked about sanitization, disinfection, and sterilization. The least effective is sanitization. So that, I guarantee it, is on the test. And which process kills 100% always is sterilization. Because remember, disinfectant is 99.999. It's not quite 100. The different types of disinfectants was covered. So all this is a lot of the information we just covered today. The good and the bad of all these different disinfectants. This is another one. You know what I will bring into the class on Monday? I forgot about something. It's not included in the book. It's not on any testing. But there's some neat videos on it. UV devices for disinfecting. That's a technology that is also being developed. Ultraviolet light. In other parts of the world, like in Australia, they are using this very effectively to be able to sterilize areas with UV devices. So, yeah, some really good review stuff for us. And then if you want to help yourself, now it's not too often that I'll have you do vocabulary, but the vocabulary of this lesson was a lot of terminology that is a lot more in depth. Things like iodophore or pathogenic germs, penetration, synthetic detergents, viscosity. If you use that vocabulary and then reference pages 31 to 34 of your book, you'll notice a whole vocabulary section. This isn't an assignment, but it is simply a way for you to really help yourself. So my goal here is to help you guys to see you're taking the class not just to pass a test, but to really understand the world that you're in, why, how, you know, and that's where learning the vocabulary is a good tool for you. So I encourage you guys to take that vocabulary list, go through the vocabulary at the end of the lesson, make sure you understand the terminology that we're using, because once we get moving forward and we start talking about restroom cleaning, okay, or carpet cleaning, we're not going to go back through and re-understand the pH scale. But when we go through the lesson about carpet cleaning, you need to understand acids and alkaline cleaners and solvent cleaners. Those are three critical terms, and understanding those different things within the chemistry are critical to understanding which kind of product I would use. If I don't use the right disinfectant, I'm not going to be effective on killing germs. And the same thing with carpet cleaning. If I use an acid on an acid stain, it's likely not going to come out. So, for example, if I try to use a really strong high alkaline cleaner to remove rust, it's going to do nothing for me on carpet. And guess where the most rust stains occur? On carpet. Reason being, when you clean carpets, Nelson, have you done any carpet cleaning with the district ever?
Yes, running into a problem.
You ever put a chair back onto a wet carpet and see what happens to it? It rusts. The metal parts of the chair, the bottom of the chair, you put it on a wet carpet, you will have a rust stain. Biggest problem I ever see in school districts in carpet cleaning is rust stains. And now you got to go back through and apply an acidic cleaner to neutralize it. And the really cool thing is you can go through and spray down an acid neutralizer and pretty effectively get rid of that real quick and then just rinse it. So, but you're going to need to know that. So this lesson sets the basis for everything that we cover from here on. Okay. Any other questions regarding our lessons the last couple of weeks? I've given you a lot to kind of think about, some stuff to help you to review. I would ask you to do this over the weekend. If there's something as you're reviewing or you're thinking about, write it down. Monday's a great time for us to cover that information as we go into stuff, okay? So feel free to do that. Remember, you guys can email me. I got about half of you sent me your assignments. Nelson, you said you emailed it to me?
Yes, your personal email?
To the DR Swindle? Or the one that...
The one
do me
that
a favor. Just re-email it to me if you wouldn't mind.
All right.
Okay. So, but a few of you, I didn't get your assignment. If you're having a struggle with that, let me know. You can message me through the classroom. There's the ability to do that. I can even post my phone number if you need to text me. If you have questions or something, feel free to do that. I typically don't respond over the weekend much because I am working on projects. This weekend, this gets the final touches of becoming my studio. So we've got drapery to put up. We've got sound insulation stuff to do. So that's a lot of my project over the weekend plus yard work. So, all right, guys, thank you for another fun week. We're moving forward. We now start into the cleaning process starting next week. So we'll have fun with that. Have a good weekend. Everybody enjoy the nice weather. And we'll see you guys on Monday.
You too.
All right. Thanks, guys.